Hi, thank you everyone for joining. I'm Corinthia, the co-chair for the Racial and Social Equity Committee, and the other co-chair is Libby. I noticed we have a few new people who haven't joined the RAISE meeting before, so if you can go through and just provide an introduction about yourself, that'll be great. Feel free to go,
Oh,
or I can call on
Rob,
people. Huh? Oh, what's
Rob,
up?
Hey,
oh,
Commissioner.
So
joining my book.
I
You
wanted
do.
to I wanted to introduce Ra Amin, who's commissioner
Man,
from.
wait a minute. Hang on, Cal.
Let's
Rod
go.
don't need no introduction for people that know. Okay, come on now. Go on and introduce him.
So he is commissioner for 5B04, which is hugs the east side of the metro tracks just below the Brooklyn station. And
No, no, no.
he
I will get it for you.
I was contacted by Dr. Hewitt, who suggested I talk to them because they want to start their own raise committee or racial committee.
Outstanding.
And so I'm helping them out with it, but he's come here to observe. He can share why he's here.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And Kyle, I just want to thank you again because Kyle did meet with me and a constituent that's helping me on this journey. As Kyle mentioned, I reached out to OR office, and OR referred me to Kyle and Lisa
Outstanding.
and you guys are so complicated. 3/4G as someone that I could work with. And Kyle got back with us and he met with us once and he invited me to attend this evening. And we're in the process of starting. We have some challenges. We're in Brooklyn and we're like most of DC. We're a changing neighborhood, so we have some challenges. So I wanted to make sure that we do everything that we can to make sure that we're representing the experiences, the interests of our diverse and changing community and city. And I just want to thank the Raise Committee again for allowing me to listen in on your meeting this evening. And hopefully I will get an invitation to come back and listen in some more as we over here in 5B take our journey to start our own racial equity committee. Again, thank you.
That is outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. The commissioners, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself. With Bruce, Liz, Carol, welcome to your first meeting.
Thanks. I've actually attended at least one before, but I appreciate the opportunity and nice to be with you guys tonight.
Good evening, all. Carol Grunwald here, SMD 03. Happy to join and listen in and learn a little bit more about the RAISE Committee.
Hey, everyone, Liz Nagy, SMD 07, also here to hear and listen and learn.
Jane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Carl Lankowski.
You're saying Jane.
Jane Sherman.
She's muted. I think she might be doing something else and listening from afar. So just press on. When she comes on, she can say hi.
Okay, well, thank you, Jane. Welcome to your first meeting. And then the other committee members, feel free to introduce yourself for our guest today.
Oh, I'll go ahead and start. I'm Libby Martin, and started as a task force member. So and was involved in the task force way back with quite a number of you.
And going left to right, I'll start. I'm only going to be on camera for this short period of time. I am been stressed the last 2-3 days because we're trying to prep to get out of town and we leave bright and early in the morning. So I look a little crazy, But thank you, everybody. My name is Lisa Gore. I'm actually the commissioner, one of the commissioners that was instrumental in forming the race committee. I wrote the resolution to initiate this committee. And Rod, just for your information and some of the newbies on here, we did it as a outshoot of our task force on racism, which came out of the George Floyd Summer of Justice. So I formed race because I wanted a standing committee as opposed to an ad hoc, because as you are well aware, racial and social equity issues do not go away. They're always there. Um, so it's been a pleasure working through this committee. I am so grateful that OR, and for those that do not know what that is the Office of Racial Equity. This committee started, and I don't think many people realize racial equity work is scientific work. It is not people coming together with just views. It is being able to look at racial and social justice issues through a racial equity lens and how that impacts individuals, communities systemically in terms of policy decisions, things that occur in neighborhoods. And fight for those issues through that lens. So it's not easy, because sometimes you have people come on and they look at an issue through their lens. But one of the things that we really wanted to do for the members of the committee very early on is to get them training on what that looks like. And we worked with, if you remember, also under the council's office, Brian McClure. When he first came, he was one of the first hired by the district. Brian was one of the first to attend our meetings and talk to us about how to operationalize this. So I am really, 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 I mean, it sends a legacy when that office recommends this group. And Cal, you've done outstanding work and liaison with them. For them to know you by name and this committee by name says a lot. So thank you. Welcome, everybody.
I'll go. I'm Ron Eichner, and I also am long-term resident of this ANC, and I go back to the original group that the task force group that preceded the commission or the committee. And Ron, the one thing I would also recommend, the task force, when it started, did a lot of work, as broke up into teams and did a lot of work on the history of the neighborhood, the history of exclusion and issues around racial and social equity historically, as well as a lot of work in what kinds of programs might go forward. And as you put your group together, I would just offer a personal view that work we did together in teams and talked about it in teams and created a report was extraordinarily helpful in getting everyone on the same page and getting everybody to know each other and work together and understand the issues. Because as Lisa points out, the issues are, it sounds sort of simple, but they're so complicated and they're so deep that if you can create a situation where people are working together and talking about these issues, it just can be very helpful. And then in closing, and I'm sorry I'm going to shut up for the whole rest of the meeting, so I'm going to talk now. And the other thing, for your benefit and the benefit of our visitors from ANC land here, I've been very, again, this is a personal thing, but I've been very involved in a lot of what happens in this community for a long time, and nothing even approaches how rewarding and uplifting this committee has been personally, for the issues we talk about and the openness that people have toward dealing with those issues in the community. It can be an extraordinarily rewarding thing for everybody involved. And I'll shut up now.
Maria, Carl, Marilee, I overlooked Brian.
I'm Marilee Jansen. I'm a longtime resident of 34G, and I'm on active and on the board of Northwest Neighbors Village. And we as an organization and me and personally are on a learning curve to see things through a racial and social justice lens. And I have been welcomed by this committee and done my best to contribute, and it's been an amazing experience for me and for our village.
Hello, my name's Maria Sims, and I am one of the original members of the committee once it got started, and I've been living in this area for now 36 years.
I think it's just me and Renee left. So I'm Cal, and I was on the original task force, jumped on it. By the way, I sent Ra links to the 3 sets of reports that the task force did with all the recommendations, for housing and community and education. So he has access to those directly. Next month will be the 5th anniversary since the task force was created. One thing I'll say about it is we looked around the country for other people who were doing this right after the George Floyd. We found absolutely nothing other than 1 or 2 city agencies. We did not find anything like a neighborhood task force or committee that was doing this. So we felt like we were really groundbreaking at that point. That's all I'll say. Renee?
Hi, I'm Renee Turner Inman. I live in Hawthorne. I've lived in the community about 18 years now. And I have worked on some subcommittees within the race committee. And I guess I was part of the second group of
Task force.
task force.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. To join.
Yep, you were.
Yes. And it's been very rewarding.
Brian,
And
would you like?
committee- I'm sorry, Commissioner, if I could ask a question, then I'm here to listen, but I'm just curious. I know that you guys worked with OR moving forward. Did you guys work with CORE as well?
Yes.
Okay, short answer is yes. And
Yeah, we work
I'm
with
sure
both
that
of them.
Kyle and Lisa can guide me through that process as well. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah. And CORE, for folks that aren't aware, that's the council's office of racial equity. One falls under the council, one falls under the mayor.
Sorry about the acronyms. This is DC. That's you can have a 20-minute conversation and never say the whole thing. Yeah.
No problem.
No problem. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Cynthia, I'd love to, and thanks for inviting the public. And I'm responding to Libby's post as co-host, announcing tonight's meeting. 26-year resident of ANC 34G and Ward 4, and I've got Julian Bond's image behind me because I'm interested in advancing, enlarging his memory at the community center and library. And have met with some folks who knew him when he was alive. He was a 26-year resident of Ward 3 and Chevy Chase. And Renee, you've talked about seeing him come out of Starbucks and always having a smile on his face and a handshake for everybody he met. Julian Bond was a remarkable figure in history, and I think honoring him could be really important for um, this task force and our community, actually. I mean, the task force initially produced a report that talked about creating a safe place to talk about race at the library and community center. And in my view, this could be it. He was the chairman of the NAACP for 10 years of the 26 years he lived in the district. And he was unique in the sense that he was Martin Luther King's first new representative in the new Georgia state legislature district. And then, of course, he was nominated for 5 minutes as vice president in 1968 before he realized he was too young for that. But a pretty remarkable influencer back then. So just like to
Okay.
throw that out there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Ra, I didn't introduce myself officially, but I'm one of the co-chairs. I joined Raise after I had been living in Chevy Chase for a little while. Before I moved to Chevy Chase, I also lived in your area. And so I had joined Raise once I found out about it due to some experiences that I have had in the neighborhood. So it's been really great for me joining Raise, just to meet, some of the neighbors here that we have on the committee. So that's been very positive. So I don't know if Cal, did you share the agenda with him? I think everybody else should have the agenda, but
I didn't, but I'll put it in the chat.
okay, thank you. So Carl, I think you're on deck for the first agenda item on Windows 250. I know some of the commissioners here are familiar with that, but I don't think Ra is familiar with it, nor maybe Brian not. I don't know about Jane either.
Yeah, if you allow me to share a screen, I'll put some images up.
Give me a minute.
Yes. You know how you're gonna do that, Lisa? I don't know how to.
I'll do.
Thank you.
Okay. You should be able to share screen now.
Okay. Okay, so Raise about, let's see, where are we? We're in June. About a year and a half ago now, Raise decided on the basis of a proposal that was brought forward to do a little public education to try to engage the neighborhood in stories that we could tell about where we've come from. We knew that the 250th anniversary of the Republic was coming up. So the concept for this public education project, which we call Windows 250, was to raise the question, so to speak, what can we do here locally in Chevy Chase to redeem the promises made in the founding document of the Republic, the Declaration of Independence, especially those passages that deal with the presumed equality of all individuals. So against that background, we drew on the stories that were available in the neighborhood. It turns out that Chevy Chase is the locus for the entire arc of American history from colonial times to the present through a racial equity lens, in fact. And so what we did is develop the concept, get three organizations to work together, Raise and through Raise the ANC, the Historic Chevy Chase DC group, which is a local neighborhood history and preservation body, and Chevy Chase Main Street, which is a revitalization program that runs here in Chevy Chase. So there was a design process that was created. We created the design. We brought the design. We interested local businesses in being hosts to posters that we would mount in the windows. And then we went back to the ANC with a budget. The ANC passed the budget by a 7-0 vote. And we were off and running. We had a soft opening of the program back in on Chevy Chase Day, which is always in September, and a more formal launch a little bit later. And here are the posters that are currently in the windows of the single largest windows in our neighborhood. That's the CVS pharmacy at the corner of McKinley Street and Connecticut Avenue. So there are 6 panels, and here they are. So there's a project design, project statement about why we're doing this, what we aim to do here, raising the big question. There's a logo that we've developed for the program, which refers back to the ancestor whose descendants, free blacks in the 1840s, populated our area, later displaced, and then the story rediscovered and some beginning of a redemptive process undertaken. And then a QR code which brings you to the online version of this story. There's a large narrative behind it that was vetted by 3 academics and 2 local activists here in the community. And all that's online through this QR code here. So that's the first image. And if I could find my button here. So there are some headlines here that refer to the images that correspond with them. This is a man named George Pointer, who was born in 1773, enslaved, lent out or hired out to George Washington and his Potomac Canal Company. He was able to buy his freedom in 1791 and rose to become the chief engineer of what became the C&O Canal. And this original piece of art that we had commissioned, raised in a commission, the Historic Chevy Chase DC commissioned it, shows George Pointer on July 4th, 1828, the opening day of the C&O Canal, piloting President John Quincy Adams and his granddaughter, the granddaughter that became the first descendant to live in our neighborhood, around the corner from where I'm living here on Broad Branch Road. These are the families, descendants that from that free black cluster of families that lived on Broad Branch. We summarize by using the term Black Broad Branch. They essentially the Pointer family descendants and the descendants of Caroline Branham. Both of them had direct connections, the originals, with George Washington. In the case of Pointer, I've already talked about who that was. In the case of Caroline Branham, she was a house servant at Mount Vernon, and she was present at George Washington's deathbed. And so it was interesting to know that in our neighborhood, we had 2 families that were directly connected, whose ancestors were directly connected to George Washington. So our history here in the neighborhood goes back to colonial times, before the Republic was even founded, into the colonial times, and then into the settlement here in Chevy Chase in the 1840s. Next, we see here that those members of that Black family were among the first to join the Black regiments, the United States Colored Troops in the Civil War. Both of them, Joseph and John, were invalided, but survived, went on to have full and very productive lives. And then that crosses with the development of modern Chevy Chase, which is here. Chevy Chase was formed by Chevy Chase Land Company that was created by Francis Newlands. Francis Newlands lived partially in Washington, D.C., went west to as with a law degree to find his fortune, got very lucky. He married the heiress to the silver fortune, the Comstock Lode, and became a billionaire of the day and decided he wanted to go into two things. One was development. He partially developed Reno, Nevada. And then his father was already the father-in-law was already senator of Nevada. And that's what he ultimately became. He was a white supremacist. So he wasn't just, had the biases of the day. He was aggressively racist. In 1912, he put forward a plank for the Democratic National Convention that would have rescinded the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And he created his white utopia in Chevy Chase, D.C., with that in mind. And so by 1940, there were no Black people left. All of the people that lived here were displaced, except for those that were servants living in white households or the custodians in the new apartment houses on Connecticut Avenue. Not everybody, however, that was living in Chevy Chase, D.C. Went with the flow here. There were people that were of liberal mind and that resisted where they could. One of them was Walter Tubriner, pictured here with Hubert Humphrey. In 1948, you were either one of two kinds of Democrats. Two Democrats came to the Congress at that time as senators. One of them was Humphrey, the other was Johnson. You were either a Johnson Democrat or a Humphrey Democrat. And Walter Tubriner, our neighbor, who lived very close to this cluster of Black families, was a Humphrey Democrat and was very much involved with the civil rights movement. He became a member first in the last year of the Truman administration of the DC Board of Education and rose to become the president of the Board of Education toward the latter half of the 1950s. And it was under him that desegregation of the DC schools occurred. Coming to the attention of President John Kennedy during the campaign of 1960 in a favorable light, Kennedy appointed him to be the last appointed mayor in the old system of commissioners that ruled DC in connection with Congress. And so that's that. Moving forward, the story is that there was a kind of serendipitous realization by the descendants of Poynter that they had once lived here, and the land that was taken from them by eminent domain and other means between 1928 and 1931 to build an all-white school. They were displaced for that reason, families broken up and scattered around. Well, they found themselves again through a process that Historic Chevy Chase DC actually have a role in facilitating. And there was a family reunion in 2015, and that's what this picture here points to. And then there was some redemptive move by a movement that stemmed from Historic Chevy Chase DC involving our commissioners as well that were on board with this. And we managed to get the city interested. And here we have the ribbon cutting for the new recreation center and the signage that pays tribute to this history and renames the park from Lafayette Park to Lafayette Poynter Park to honor the entire arc of history from George Poynter and Carolyn Lanham forward. And one of the key figures in that is the 8th generation direct descendant of George Poynter, James Fisher, who unfortunately passed away beginning of last year, speaking to engaging with the students now in Lafayette School. So those are that's the project that we have mobilized under, and it's working out fairly well. We've done a few programs on it, and I invite you to all of you that are here visiting to have a close look at it through the QR code, or if you like, we'll send you the link.
Thank you. And then Carl, we have our last window event, the 29th at 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. There's a meeting, a 30-minute meeting on the 22nd, which is this coming Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Oh, this coming Sunday, the 20th at 2 o'clock.
22nd, yeah.
22nd. Yes, thank you. And the new window panes look wonderful.
Thank you.
So we have about 22 minutes. I like to stay on task because our time is very important. The next item on the agenda was to discuss the Lafayette resolution. I put it in the chat
You
just in case.
skipped over something.
Oh, what did I skip over?
The racial
The
equity
update
board.
from the,
Oh, I'm so sorry, Cal. Go ahead. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to wrap it up.
I heard somebody else trying to talk. Somebody else want to say something?
Cal, that was me, a guest on the call tonight, but listening to Carl, you would assume that all of the history recited is in fact history. And the challenge I have with that is it really leaves out too much. And I think one of the things I like about Julian Bond is that he began most of his interviews by asking, where you were in 1954 when Brown versus Board of Education was decided by the Supreme Court. And of course, today, a lot of folks, were born after 1954. But what Bond understood was that Washington as a city was segregated broadly, and that George Washington University did not admit its first student of color until 1954. So some of the issues that Carl raises are not only not unique to our neighborhood, but are, we're using them as an arc, an allegory for the entire country. And yet, I think it leaves out so much. And one of those, when you talk about Newlands, for example, Newlands' father was a Scottish doctor who practiced medicine and died in 1851 after treating patients in Natchez, Mississippi. The family moved back to Troy, New York, where they were from. And of course, that family fought on the Union side. And then Newlands had a rare ability, I think, to put his foot in his own mouth when it came to politics. But the fascinating thing about that is that he was a follower more than anything else. And there were no racial covenants in Chevy Chase until after his death. So it's some of the history is a little too spotty from the standpoint of kind of what you're portraying. The fact is that the Turner family, the Pointer family, the Pointer Harris family moved here after the Nat Turner Rebellion and a need to move out of Georgetown and find a place of refuge. They came to Chevy Chase because it was a place of refuge and were here for 3 generations and then removed by an administration of the federal government, Calvin Coolidge, to make room for a white school. But so many other schools, you think about what is today, what used to be Western High School, and today is the Duke Ellington Art high school. That school was a segregated white school where black families were relocated out of Georgetown to make way for its expansion. So much is left out. You would think there are actually people who've attended our ANC meetings who come away with the view that Chevy Chase is more restrictive than other areas, which is frankly not true. The area that I'm in, I live within a block of two former presidents of the DC Chamber of Commerce, a Howard University professor, and many noted African American residents. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by saying, we need to look at this history and ignore where we are today. So what I miss is kind of celebrating where we are today in a better way and recognizing when we talk about Gladys Mack or some of the other folks that are part of Lisa Gore's SMD, that's something we should be celebrating. But to be talking about Newlands in a way that makes him kind of, one-dimensional, which is simply actually kind of interesting, but not really the case. It ignores so much else history that actually is painful but important to look at. And Julian Bond was on the curating committee for the National Museum of African American History, which I think does the best job about the institutionalization of racism. And I think the current curator, Lonnie had some really important things to say about Julian Bond's legacy and his importance in the initial curation of that museum. But that history is accurately told. And I think we're missing something. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, I get a right of response, I think, for that dissertation, and I'll start with the observation that it wasn't just Lonnie Bunch. Lonnie Bunch had a lot of help. One of the helps was also living in our neighborhood, and that's Jackie Day Sewer, who's the curator of that museum. And when they were looking for their house, I learned from them, they were shown that house because that was the only place that these are people that are living here today, that they would be allowed to live. So this isn't anything, first of all, that's done. And it's when you try to normalize Newlands, there were a lot of Newlands people back then. He had power, and he was aggressive in the use of that power to follow an agenda. One of the other things that you didn't mention about Newlands, which I will now, and I forgot to mention before, is that he was very deeply involved in the movement to exclude Asians from this country, Japanese, Chinese, and so forth. So it wasn't just the African-American question, it was others as well.
No, I think absolutely. Newlands was rabidly anti-Asian. And if you read that history and understand his development at Burlingame in San Francisco, there's a lot there that, is kind of self-evident about Newlands. But it's not what's in the windows. Just say that.
Yeah, things change, Brian, and we acknowledge with great pride that we have had 3 African-American presidents of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association, the same Citizens Association that worked very hard to keep this community white. In fact, the Constitution this is beyond Newlands now, right? There were 3,000 members of this association. It was the largest one in the city, and its constitution, which was printed in the broadsheet that it put out monthly, was specified in Article 4. And in Article 4, and that didn't change until 1972. And what that Constitution, 1972, and what that Constitution said is that the qualifications for membership were that you had to be 18 years old and you had to be white. 1972, Brian.
I think that's the year in which ANC Miller in Spring Valley stopped including racial covenants, racially exclusive covenants on their sales contracts. So, and that was only by court order. The reality is that if you look at Spring Valley, if you look at Wesley Heights, if you look at all of that area, you are looking at a history of deliberate racial exclusion that goes back before, well, it was contemporary with New Orleans, the expansion of Massachusetts Avenue. That is something, you know, that the city can't unwrite either. Are we saying that we were, you know, we're uniquely racist relative to other parts of the city?
No, but we have our neighborhood, right?
I know my neighborhood. I moved here because my kids got a chance to go.
I thought we're having a conversation. You talked.
Okay.
I think Voltaire said in his most famous work, you have to cultivate your own garden. That's what I'm asking us to do. That's what Ray's is asking us to do. We live in Chevy Chase. Well,
Carl, what I know is
we
I
hope
sent
that
my
other
kids.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. Let me stop the conversation and bring us back to the norms of this committee. We're not going to interrupt each other. This is the one safe space where we can talk about these issues, but we are going to do so respectfully. So one person talk, then let the other person talk. I think there's also other members of the committee that have their hand raised that would like to get into the conversation. And we can't let this conversation, and I'm sorry, I'm not the co-chair, but I'm just speaking up as one of the founders of Race. We can't let this conversation dominate our agenda. We have other business that we have to get onto, but let's please not interrupt.
I'm done.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to add anything before we move on?
I have my hand raised. I'm not going to belabor the point, but you know, we are dealing with an issue that's germane to our ANC area. I don't think that most Black people that live in this part of DC will say that this is more racist than any other area in DC. I would hope the white folks living in this area would say the same thing. Our aim is not to point out who's most racist. Our aim is to educate on what occurred in the history of our neighborhood. That's all I'm going to say about that. I just feel very strongly about that. And then secondly, in terms of, you know, the Black community that currently lives here and the amount of excellence that we do have in our members, we celebrate that every day. I don't know if ANC 34G ever had a Black chair. I think I might be the first. Maybe not, maybe the second at least. We talk about Gladys Mack because Gladys Mack might have been the first female budget director of this city. She lived in this ANC. You talk to my husband about why he got this house, and I think Carl said it as well. My husband will tell you where he was directed in this Chevy Chase area. And it wasn't on the avenue. Most people, why my district has some of the highest percentage of Blacks in the area is because this is where they were directed. And if you talk to my husband, who's still alive, he's outside cutting grass. If you want to drive by my house, he's out there right now in the yard cutting the grass. He will tell you he vividly, and I say vividly, can tell you and even take you in this neighborhood to the houses that he was shown. And this was a man that, I don't care what race you are, most people have never done or made what Vertus Gore has done and made. And he was not happy with that experience. And he talked about fighting to get the house that he wanted to get and having to, you know, get after the real estate agents to show him what he wanted. So there's a lot of history here, but it is what it is, and that's part of what this committee does. I mean, this is a good example for you because this is not a feel-good committee. We tell the truth about the history. We tell the truth about people's experiences, and we listen to other points of view in that process. But this is a committee that, and I think Ron said, we do the hard work of looking at these issues and making sure that, we speak through the truth, speak power.
Cynthia, I have my hand up. Let's see.
Go ahead, Cal. Or whoever
Um,
had their hand up.
That was Brian. Brian, do you mind if we go to Ron quickly and then we'll wrap it up with you? Because we have like 7 minutes. We definitely end at 8. We don't go over like the ANC.
Yep, we end on we're very organized.
I would just point out, Brian, that Carl is and the people who put together the 250 project are coming at this in large part from a history basis, and they're not advocating, they're not trying to point fingers at anybody. They're trying to fill in the gaps in the history. And I'm on the board of the DC History Center, and DC and we tell the stories of neighborhoods, and it is the things you raise. That is a story. That is a story of whatever the last 50 years, but the 200 years before that is another story. And maybe you can't tell every part of every story every time. And so the point of the placards is to let people understand some of the history of the neighborhood. It's not an indictment. It's not saying this neighborhood was unique. God knows this neighborhood was not unique in this city. But a lot of people are very unaware of how their neighborhood came to be.
Thank you, Ron. Brian, can you keep it to like 10 seconds or less, please?
Sure. I'll just say, Ron, thank you. Carl, thank you. I moved to this neighborhood because of the diversity. And in fact, our daughter partied with Sasha Obama because kids have a way of finding each other in high school. And she didn't go to Sidwell, but the Obamas sent their kids to Sidwell. But I sent my kids to Jackson Reed, just like Lisa Gore sent her family to Jackson Reed. And there's a lot to celebrate. So my own view is that's important to do. So
thank you, Brian. Libby?
Yeah,
we got 5 minutes.
I just want to quickly point out that the premise of the Windows 250 is, again, to pose a question. What can we do in Chevy Chase to redeem promises made in our original in our Declaration of Independence? And so that is the angle. It's a question raised rather than a celebratory statement. And I think that is something that gets us thinking as we go forward, as opposed to stopping with particular moments and particular successes. We've got to talk about, what we can continue to do.
And thank you. And with that, we would like to see you all on June 22nd, 2 p.m. at the corner of Connecticut and McKinley to discuss the last window pane of the Windows 250 project. There will be lots of other historians there. If you would like to continue this dialogue, we welcome it. And I'm sorry for overstepping you, Cal, but if you could give us a brief overview of the last board meeting that you attended, and it's 7:56.
So I just before the meeting, I finally got sent the meeting minutes, which I was gonna go into more detail. We can do that next meeting. I have to go through them and digest them and remember what actually happened. But this is the Racial Equity Advisory Board, which advises is advisory board to the Office of Racial Equity. And they have quarterly meeting. Next one is near the end of July. And mostly, of course, it's about how Ori, or I don't know how you pronounce it, the Racial Equity Office deals with different agencies around the city, because that's primarily what they do. I think that's all I need to say right now.
Okay, thanks. So next meeting you'll like to go, which will be in July, you'll like to talk more about the June meeting. And I don't know if it's going to coincide before or after the July meeting, but maybe you'll give an update on that.
It's July the 23rd.
Okay, so I think we have our meeting before that. Okay, so that works. 7:58, quickly 2 minutes. I put, if people weren't aware, there's the Lafayette resolution. Within that resolution, it discussed for Rays and the Lafayette Belonging Committee to work together on probably just having more educational events. School's last day is the 18th. I don't know if we have new belonging co-chairs on the committee. I'll look into that. But I just wanted to see if we could probably have a smaller group kind of connect with the belonging committee to kind of brainstorm some ideas of maybe some educational or community events that we could have with the belonging committee, and then bring it back to the committee at large. So something to think about. And
Corinthia, if you need
Yeah.
someone to work with you on that, I'd be happy to.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else interested? Okay, so with the, oh, Lisa, what's that? Okay, so with that, it's 7:59. Libby and I will try and connect with the belonging chairs. I don't know if the belonging committee will be interested in working over the summer, but I do know when we start back in the fall, the belonging committee has several events for the parents. So maybe we can try and connect on that, Cal.
This is not about this, it's about something else.
Sure.
So the item
Take
that
us
got
home.
dropped, the item got dropped from the agenda is the review of the recommendations. And we seem to always run out of time for that. So maybe we
Yeah.
could schedule a meeting that just deals with that. It could be half hour or 45 minutes or something, but I feel like this keeps getting pushed down. And it's been months and
Okay.
months and months.
Okay. Understand that. So I think right now we don't have a lot of other items on our agenda for our next meeting. So at our next meeting, would you like us to, how about I propose that we just go through, like you give us I don't know how long you might need on the update from the last racial equity board meeting. Maybe you give us like a 5 to 10 minute overview on that, and then we spend the last minutes, the last part. I know we have already have the document in which we kind of outline where we've been with those recommendations. So I'll go through and try and find that through my email, and then go through that. That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I do think we actually should go back to the original list of recommendations
Yep.
and not the summarized one that
No,
Maurice did.
that's what we'll do. Yeah, we're gonna go through the original list.
Cal, are you referring to the PowerPoint document?
Yeah, he
Or
doesn't want to do that one.
you want to refer to the
Yeah, he
original?
want to do the original
I'm
one.
not talking about the one that I'm not talking about the one that Maurice did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the PowerPoint. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, thank you. Our next meeting, let me pull out my calendar, will be July 21st, right? 1, 2, 3. July 21st at 7. The final thing is since Bruce is here, Bruce, I'm going to send you an email tonight to post on the website for the call for new members. Hopefully you can get that up for us. And then if you're interested on staying on the committee, please follow the steps of the request, open call for new members. That is it.
I'm sorry. I
Can
think our
I-
meeting is on the 15th, not the
Yeah.
21st.
Oh, yeah,
thought maybe-
yeah. You know what? Sorry about that. I was looking at Monday. It's the
Yeah, I thought it was the
15th.
15th
Corinthia,
too.
before we go, Cal, if we're going to do a serious review of the recommendations and how they impact our work moving forward, uh, you might want to consider when you look at the recommendations of breaking that up, maybe by working groups or something, because to do the recommendations for all three working groups
That's a lot.
in one meeting we'll either rush through it and it won't be meaningful, or or we won't get through it. So we might want to break it up over 3 meetings.
Right. Or we have one meeting per each group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I know, the only one that there's been any action on is our first recommendation for the housing, which is the civic core, and the first recommendation of the community group, which was to make this a standing committee.
What about
Yeah.
education?
We've done, yeah, I was gonna say we've done a
We can
lot
do
on
a
the
lot on
education.
education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just gotta get the people to come, more people to come. But we've been doing a lot on the
Okay. Well, as
education.
long as let's have a real serious time, spend some serious time on this. Whether it's one
can work
meeting
it
or
out.
3 meetings, it's fine. Great.
I
I
also
was-
think, can we do the group that had the recommendation? I forget which group it was, the one that Brian referred to about having a permanent,
The task
presence
force,
in the community center.
That was the community
Yeah,
group.
that was community.
I
Yeah,
do have the minutes.
it'd be nice to do that first, because if that is something we want to pursue, this might be the time to come up with some sort of recommendation for to ask the ANC to get behind, to lean on DEMPED to include it in the ultimate detailed design of the community center.
Yeah.
I think what I'll do is
or the library. I think we should have an open mind of where that should occur. But if it should occur, we should think about expressing it in a way that is compelling to the decision makers.
Yeah.
So I would say I'll send out the links to the 3 reports. I just sent them to Ross. I got them fresh. And you can glance at the reports of the 3 groups.
Thank you.
And can I ask Brian? Brian, I thought you sent out an email or something previously written about that. If you could resend that to the co-chairs, myself.
Sure. I do have that initial report. Yeah, it goes back a ways, but yeah.
Because I think me, Libby,
Yeah.
who else was on community with us that is here?
We did a write-up. I can look for it.
Cal. Yeah, us 3. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because we sat on that subcommittee. So we would be the ones that, can work with you on coming up with that recommendation. But I agree with Ron. I think that's the perfect place for it to be.
Can I just also just very quickly ask what constitutes the recommendations that preceded the establishment of RAISE? I've taken a close look at the December 12th, 2022 ANC resolution, which I believe sought to aggregate all of the recommendations that had come from the task force on racism and had then recommendations that had been approved by the commission. So Cal, whatever document you're working off of, I looked at that document as what I understood to be at least the complete catalog, if that's correct. If not correct, then somebody can help me out on that.
I don't know if that is where I saw this, but there was a pretty much recommendation by recommendation charge that the raise was given by the commission to say we work on this one versus we study that one versus
That's what he's talking about. We just kind of brought those over into like a separate document because working from the resolution is cumbersome. And then Maurice tried to make it less cumbersome by moving it over to the PowerPoint. But that is basically the charge of the recommendations, all of those. Yeah.
And
And Bruce, I'm going to send you. I know we got to wrap up because we only go to 8, you guys. But
right.
Bruce, I'm going to send you the recording. If you could post that on our YouTube.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I can just pull it off of the Zoom account. Sure. No,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Either way.
But just
thank you so much for everyone for joining. It's 8:07. We're gonna wrap it up.
Thank you.
Oh
Thank
man,
you.
crack that whip, Chair
Great to
Simmons.
see everybody.
Yeah, no, usually she has this meeting closed by 8 and Zoom off. So
Yeah, I'm not
good this
recording.
time.
I would have stopped the recording and said goodnight and hung up, but I have to drop.
But
Have a
and
good night.
one of the things everybody could do, and Bruce, if you had more clarifying questions on that, just send it in an email because we could clarify it. But yeah, this group shuts down really on time, so we have to be very organized about our our discussion.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Night,
Nice to
everyone.
meet you, Ra.
Nice to meet you, Raj. Yep, thanks.
Thanks for coming,
All
everybody.
right, take care.
Have a good one.